All right. And just like that, we're live on the air. Welcome to paraglidingtalk.com. I'm your host, Robert Michaels. Glad you are here. Stoked about tonight's episode. We got Harley Milne with us. If you don't know Harley Milne, you're going to be pleasantly impressed. Harley Milne has broke some records. He flew across the continental United States, coast to coast, from San Diego all the way to Florida. Did it in record time. There was some pretty cool stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about that adventure. He also has flown all 50 states in the United States, raising money for charity. Has just a great head on his shoulders for aviation. Is now certified in general aviation as well. And so we're going to pick his brain a little bit. We might even talk a little bit about some airport stuff. We're going to let the show kind of evolve in whatever direction it's going to go. So also Harley is a teacher. He's an instructor for paramotoring here in sunny Southern California. It's pouring down rain. Is it raining up there, Harley?
It finally dried up a little today. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
we've
been
had some
raining.
rain.
So I want to mention a couple sponsors. One of those is PPG Smoke. Ryan Roberts started PPG Smoke years ago, where he was making these smoke machines that you would add to your paramotor. And so when you're flying around, you can blast some smoke in the air and draw some stuff in the sky. And then he decided, you know what, I really don't like the cost of the aviation stuff. He's like, I bet you I could bring the price down a little bit on some of this stuff. And he made a chase cam, and then he made some 3D printed lamels to correct the uh, thrust or the torque that happens when you're full throttle on your motor. And then he invented some other stuff. And so, anyways, ppgsmoke.com is the website if you want to go and buy some stuff at reasonable prices, and you'll really enjoy what he has brought to the table. ppgsmoke.com. Also, paramotorprops.com. In case you blow up a prop, and it happens to the best of us, go check out their website. You can purchase a prop, and within just a few days, you'll have one in the mail to you, and they're reasonably priced. Paramotorprops.com, and that is the place to go. So Harley runs dreamlifterparamotors.com, and he runs this school. And what I've mentioned to a few people is that they're they're instructors that maybe are good on the ground and can train you with the radio, and they may be okay pilots. But Harley has the best of both worlds. He's a good instructor and also a talented pilot that has flown in some pretty crazy conditions, pretty much the full spectrum of flying paramotors. So he flew these adventure flights. He's flown several different times where he's been in situations where normal people would never put a motor on their back and a wing over their head. He's flown at night with exception by the FAA. And I would argue, one of the pioneers that is pushing our sport in a good direction. And just really glad that you're here. So thank you for coming on the show, Harley. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
So I had some questions dialed up for you. One of those had to do with your your aspirations for the next big adventure. Do you care to share any of your ideas?
Yeah, I'm losing track because I was kind of keeping it hush hush, and I've been gradually letting out a little bit more and more. So as we all know that water is probably the biggest killer in our sport, and a lot of people sort of are brought into the mindset to really look at our motors as something that is going to quit every 5 minutes. And so, we tend to think of our engines as unreliable, and that taking risk by flying over water is not necessarily a good thing. And so I think one of the things that I've achieved, and I think quite a few people would agree with is that I think the engines that we have today in the sport are just incredibly reliable. I don't think it really matters which brand that you specifically look at. Obviously, there are some advantages of using one brand over another. But basically, if you look at Vitarazi and Corsair and a few of those other brands, they've just become incredibly reliable that, when you do a cross country, whether it's supported or unsupported, that you can rely on that engine and it's just going to keep going. And even when things are not quite 100% because you messed up, they still seem to find a way to keep flying. And so for me, part of the trips that I've done was to show that they're reliable. So the next part is really sort of pushing the odds and to do a big water crossing. I had for some years planned to fly across Lake Michigan, and I got beaten to that last year by someone else. And I think I had a slightly longer trip over the water planned, but they still had an exceptional trip. And I would say it was a pretty large, successful water crossing between land masses. So I think that was pretty cool. Instead of doing Sonoma to Oshkosh last year, I had actually planned to do Alaska to Russia. And that wouldn't have been such a big water crossing, but it still had some challenges and some risks associated with water. So all of that's sort of been kind of driving sort of what am I going to do next. And I don't know if you just recently saw, but there were some altitude records, both with a gas-driven paramotor and also with an electric paramotor. I'm kind of a little jealous because those are records that I would have loved to have gone after. And I had an inkling about one of them. I had actually been contacted about a year ago for someone to use the tracking devices that I have, which are official
ADSB.
FAI tracking devices. They're actually GPS devices.
Oh,
And so those we used, I believe, for the electric paramotor record that I think was like 4,500 meters or something like that. So it's an exceptional, success, I think. So sort of coming back to your question, I have this goal of doing a big water crossing. And so I have set up a training run to fly from Florida to the Bahamas. And while there are a couple islands that are a little bit closer that I could go to, I'm basically trying to set up a training run that's about equal to crossing Lake Michigan. So I'll have just a few more miles more than the last guy who did it. And then the goal is to really sort of make sure that the widest area is directly over open ocean for that at least 75 nautical miles. Actually, I think that's metric miles. I think no, I got that wrong. 75 direct miles. I forget what the correct term for that is. But that trip will probably equate to about, I don't know, about 90 to 110 miles to make it into a legal port of entry. So essentially, there are two things that I'm trying to do. One is an international trip and actually fly out of one country to another country and do all the things that are legally required to do that and do it in a foot launch paramotor. And to my knowledge, I don't think that's necessarily be done, out of the United States. I think in Europe, it might have been done a couple times, hopping over small countries is probably not quite so difficult. So that's a training run. And the main trip, which I'm not going to disclose just yet where I'm going to leave from and where I'm going, and we'll have to keep a very careful eye on the political climate over the next few months. But essentially, I'm expecting it to be about 124 miles across water and at least about 150 to 180 miles to the nearest airport that I can go to. What I haven't determined yet is whether that airport is a legal port of entry. If it's not, then I've got a big challenge on my hands because I I would have to carry at least another 2 gallons of fuel on top of the 5 that I think I would need. And so that's I don't know if I have the strength to be able to launch short of having a 15-mile-an-hour wind to pick me up off the ground.
You're gonna be doing some extra training for that.
Yeah. So there's logistically there's a few more challenges. I pretty much have most of what I need worked out for the Florida to Bahamas. This other trip, which will be leaving from another country, going to a third country, is going to be very, very interesting, at least from my perspective.
So you broke a world record. Um, Talk a little bit about that. How did you, and we've had this discussion on a previous episode, but I see a lot of new faces in the chat and it's worth talking about again. But what were the big highlights of that world record? And did you have, like, when you typically will have somebody there present from the world record organization to like honor you and give you the plaque? Was it something that they sent to you later? How did that go down?
So for the Guinness World Record, the way that process works, of course, is you have to get them to approve what the record is that you're trying to set, especially if it's a new one. That's a fairly lengthy process. And then once they define that, then they go ahead and define all of the requirements which must be met in order for you to succeed at them. And then depending on how they are, how they actually run, as to what some kinds of requirements might exist for, either someone from Guinness World Records is actually there, or people that are qualified and who can assess your performance throughout it, and validate that and have sufficient video footage and photographs and signatures and witnesses and all that kind of stuff that has to happen. So in terms of the Guinness World Record, it's quite a lot to jump through, and I was able to do that because that record got set over I don't know what, a 7-month period. So it wasn't exactly practical to have one person chasing me around the country the whole time. The FAI records are actually very, very interesting. Leo Cutula, I believe, is the U.S. Representative here. And essentially, once again, there are some defined records that you can either try and beat, and you can try and beat those either at the U.S. level or the country level, or at the international level. And once again, it does mean initially getting FAI to agree to it. They have to have some trained people that have met through the requirements. You've got to have your FAI license, which we get through here in the United States. It's the US, I got to remember this, I think it's the US Aeronautical Society or organization. And they essentially are the local equivalent here in the United States to what FAI is. And then, of course, Leah sort of glues all that together. And so it's a process. You've got to plan ahead. It takes a fair amount of time, sometimes many, many months, to get all the right people and all the right things in the right places before you even attempt to try and do something. And hopefully you're successful straight away. But as we all know, with these pretty substantial projects, like a speed altitude record, it takes some planning. And if the weather doesn't cooperate, you could spend months trying to pull it off. So there's a tremendous amount of planning, not only from being able to get the records properly authenticated and given to you, but also just even to go and try and execute them.
Breaking a world record is going to involve pushing some personal boundaries. Were there any moments during your paramotoring journey where you felt like you were pushing the limits? And how did you manage those risks?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, of course, the big coast to coast record with an entire team behind me, for me, it was something very new to try and do something of that scale. And so I think, not a lot was known by me or even my team about how to go do that. And we spent, a couple of months discussing and planning, and we developed more measures around what would happen if I fell out the sky, or what would happen if I had an engine out, and how would they get to me, and all that kind of thing. Um, I, I mean, there are lots of people in Europe who've done some bigger cross country, certainly from a free flight perspective, doing sort of hundreds of miles. But I don't think too many people here in the US had done these sort of big cross countries, trying to get across the entire country. I mean, there were guys like Matt Minyard and some people well before him. But the equipment wasn't as good back in those days. They weren't necessarily trying to race and get, a substantial speed. They were simply trying to succeed in getting from point A to point B. And so for me, it became a personal race, more against myself and against time, to try and get across the country faster than anyone else. And so, we set the expectations that it might take about 2 weeks, because the previous quickest record was about 18 days. And, what I had told my team was that we were going to try and do it in 10. And of course, we did it in 8, and discovered, through doing it, that we could have been able to get it done in 6. So it's certainly doable. Somebody can beat us there. But to come back to your specific risk awareness, I think the initial launch off the beach in San Diego with all the talk twist was something that was pretty scary for everyone at that point in time. And so just recently, I had an issue with a frame that was bent, and you couldn't really see that it was bent. And so dealing with testing and making sure that the equipment is performing optimally, I think, is something essential to mitigate that risk. And then, of course, the other substantial risk really has to do more with weather. And yeah, I've played a little bit of Russian roulette, particularly on the Sonoma to Oshkosh trip, because I was hell bent on doing it in the 6 to 7 days, and it was unsupported. And I had very specific goals of where I wanted to get to on a given day. And so I remember I was just shy. I was in Derby, which is along I-80, sort of on the edge of Nevada, heading out towards Utah. And we had this storm come through, and it was a pretty substantial storm. And I kind of waited it out as long as I could, and then finally there was a very small break, and I was like hell bent on going, because I knew I needed to get to Winnemucca by that night. And so I launched, and Ray was sort of texting me back and forth. Ray was my crew chief on the coast to coast. And you can actually look at the graph where I'm literally going up 500 feet and then down by 750 feet and back up by 500 feet. And this is all in the pitch dark. Like the weather was substantially bad. It was right over the top of me, and I had tried to skirt around it. But as I was coming closer towards the airport, it's on the edge of a big mountain. And it wasn't the smartest thing I've done. And it was a little scary because it was at night. So,
oh my word,
don't do that.
And the altitude changes. Did you have anything to monitor your airspeed or ground speed, or your ground clearance altitude, any of those?
Yeah, so I mean, for all of those trips, I usually run at least 2 apps that help me track all that. Traditionally, I've been using Fly Sky High and For Flight, because as an airplane pilot, I had that as well. The other product that's absolutely fantastic, that a local member of the group that flies with us here in the Bay Area, he developed an app called XC Nav. and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it gives you all the stuff from, you know, your mean sea level altitude to your a level above the ground, to ground speed, wind direction, and then this whole massive big group component where we can keep track of everyone in the group. They all show up on the map, and we can do live texting. And a bunch of the guys now are using the new Cena R and the Cena 50R, I think it is. And so when they get close enough, they can even talk together, and they've done away with 2-meter radios and all that kind of stuff. So it's these apps are just getting better and better. I don't use Gaggle much, but I know that's also fairly popular with a bunch of people.
How did XC Nav benefit your flight?
Well, you know what I like about it is it includes everything from airspace to all of the flying metrics that I need. And then, of course, you can even build in your entire track, all of the waypoints that you want to. So I was able on my computer to figure out what my waypoints and what my path would be, and export an XML file out and just import it in. And there I was, ready to go. And I've been
Wow.
able to do that with all of the apps. One thing left that I know that Caleb wants to add to that app is also the XE context, where you can push those logs up and you know, join the contest. And so for a lot of our guys that fly quite a bit, you know, they might succeed. You know, I think I was number 11 or 20 maybe last year or the year before, and I haven't done enough flying this year, I think, to be even shown on the map. So, but yeah, great products that make a huge difference. I don't think anyone is really not flying with any form of GPS these days. So it's they are exceptional products that really do make a difference.
What's next on the ADSB out project that you were working on?
Yeah, so that's cool. Actually, I just put in a new note back to U Avionics, who make the ADSB product that I utilize. There is a group on Facebook that is specifically discussing ADSB and paramotoring. And it's definitely something that a lot of US paramotor pilots are wanting to add, to not only have ADSB in, which of course XCNav has just out of the box, but to be able to have ADSB out is another big component. So it's one thing to be able to see the other traffic around you, but a lot of other people use technology to see what aircraft are around them. And unfortunately, a lot of people have not been able to take use of ADSB out here in the United States. So there is a product that's generally available to people in Europe and Australia, and it's relatively cost effective to do that, about half the price of what we have to do here in the United States. And so I haven't seen a huge amount of movement in terms of the technology, and I'm waiting to get just a little bit more information on that. But what most of us are having to do in the United States is actually request an N number from the FAA. It costs, I don't know, $5 or $10. And then once you're assigned that N number, you register your paramotor, and then your N number is essentially your license plate is assigned to you, and that's how they connect you to your aircraft or to your paramotor. And once you get that, then you are able to get what's called a hex number, and essentially that's an identification ID that you plug into your ADSB unit, and that allows you to legally transmit through ADSB out your position in the air, and that's giving you your X, Y, Z coordinates, so your altitude and your position, and enables other pilots to see you. And if you've been to my website or any of the videos that we posted, I showed a really cool picture. If you give me a second, I'll try and pull it up.
Is it on 50X Challenge?
50x challenge. Yeah, I think it might be posted there. If not, I don't know. I'll probably text it to you so you can pull it up. But there's a really cool picture where you can see all the people flying into
I got it.
Oshkosh, and you can see the line of aircraft, and then there's the tiny little paramotor wing, and that was me flying right next to all these guys. Let's see. Flight
Sonoda
tracks
Oshkosh.
real time. Keep going down. I don't know if it's posted up there. Um, it's probably on the Facebook page somewhere. Maybe someone else can talk for a while. I'll go find it. But anyway, it was just really cool to be able to watch, see myself in the pack of other aircraft, and it really does create an opportunity to enhance one's safety by not only being able to see other people in the air around you, but also to be seen. And so I think there's definitely a desire for more and more people in the United States or ultralight pilots to make use of the technology. It's just proving to be a fair amount of work to go do it right now. The last time I checked was that EAA were working with the FAA to try and develop some kind of, registration process where people could identify themselves and get a hex number and be able to transat ADSB. So that would make it much more simple and quite frankly, enhance the safety in the system that we fly in. For a lot of people, if you're flying low in Class G airspace in uncongested areas, there's really probably not a lot of benefit to you to doing that, especially if you're flying, a local farm where there's no other air traffic. But particularly for those of us who are doing these big, expensive trips across, very high altitudes across the country, or who are flying around airports and other congested areas, it's an invaluable tool to help enhance safety. And definitely, if you have the ability to do it, I'd encourage you to do it. Join the group. Mark Ingman kind of keeps an eye on things there, and he's been fantastic in sort of helping educate people. We helped goodness, Mark Honeycutt was the last guy that I helped, and he got a couple of these going. I don't know what the total number of paramotor pilots are, but it's quite a few of us now that actually use it. And then, of course, if you can't afford to do ADSB out or registration isn't your process, use one of these apps that actually include that. So we get audible notices on XCNav that say, there's an aircraft near to you, and you can set even how far away they need to be before you get warned. So
Wow.
it's absolutely fantastic, and it works very, very well. If you are within the cell tower range, there's no additional costs involved. You just use the app and you've got all this information that you wouldn't ordinarily have. For those of us that sort of fly much higher, I actually have another device from UAvionics called Sky Vector, I think it is. I don't know, I forget what it's called, but basically it's an ADSB in unit which gives me real-time weather and real-time other aircraft. So if I don't have a cell phone connection, that's how I'm able to get that same information in.
Duckspit PPG said, how do you get your broadcast info and end number? November.
Yeah, so that's a long topic. The short answer is you can go to the FAA website, and you fill in, you look for how you get an N number. Once you've got an N number, then you can fill out an application, or essentially a registration application for an ultralight. We do have some advice to how to make that easier rather than harder, because there are a few options, and depending which options you select can make it easier or more difficult. So that's the basis of how to do that. They're actually it's relatively cheap. I think the registration, I don't know, I thought it was either $10 or $20 to do the registration. It just takes anything from a couple of months up to 4 to 6 months to do. And if you do it all correctly, it'll go a lot smoother. I think the last time I checked, there was about a 4.5 month delay from when you submitted your registration to when you actually got it. And then once you've got it, if you've already purchased an ADSB out unit, you just take the hex number that you get with that registration and plug it in, and you're A for away. It's pretty straightforward.
That's great. We've
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear. I'm pleasantly surprised that the apps, and that's kind of what I was hoping we were going to find a loophole with that because of how expensive they were, how bulky they were, and the lack of response from the FAA giving us allowance because of, some little questionable reasons. Let's take a break. We're going to spin the wheel and give some stuff
Yeah.
away. So I got
Oh,
a
what are we giving away?
well, we
What do
got
we got
these
going on?
I got these calendars from the guys, PPG Grandpa, www.carepp.com. Scuba Steve's on the back. We got Will Fly, paramotorarkansas.com. These guys, they have Clear Prop, their show on Monday nights. And so they sent me a couple calendars. So I'll send this one out. There's some cool pictures in here. You need
Nice.
some calendars. You need so I'm going to send the calendar out. I've got also the 3D printed mirror handle for your on the back of your throttle, and you put the mirror right here, straps to your deal. And then I'm going to send this, which is your this is a holder. It's a 3D printed holder that holds your micro SD cards. So I don't think I've ever really showed you what those are, but those have been going out. And then also you get a paraglidingtalk.com sticker.
All right. Well, it sounds like it's pretty good, man. Look at that.
Yeah,
Bing. And
sweet
those are
little
nice
package.
stickers too, by the way.
Yeah, they're heavy
Just saying.
duty.
Yes, they are. You
And
ready?
I'm gonna even throw in one of these USPPA stickers tonight. You're getting all kinds of good stuff.
Go.
All right. The spin of this wheel is brought to you by calamityKite.com, calamityKiteClinic.com. Sean actually runs that ground handling school. And, obviously the weather's not permitting a whole lot of training, but at least you can know about it. So there's some good advertising there. Nebraska PPG, Josh Bowden runs the school in Nebraska. He's got all kinds of years of history under his belt and training, and has some of the best people surrounding him with his school. Nebraska PPG is on the cutting edge equipment and understanding the sport. So go check out his Facebook link in the description, and then you can also go to his website. There's links in the description. Oh man, it's going to be close.
Oh. Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
Guardian Service Dog. Congratulations, Guardian Service Dogs. You are the winner chicken dinner. Please go to the website, paraglidingtalk.com/contact. If you go to the contact section, if you'll send me, just fill out the form on there, send me your address, and I'll send over this little goodie package.
You like that spin on the wheel I put on today?
Yeah, that was good. That was
Got
a
some
good
fire
spin.
singing,
Yep,
awesome.
that's the best yet.
Yeah.
By the way, in
Hey,
moderation, we got Scott and Sean. Scott's been he's kind of the new guy, but he's been a part of a lot of shows, actually. He's like he's at least like 6 or 7 months in now. Sean is on episode like 250 or something crazy. Tonight's
yeah.
episode is what, 288? Yeah, 288. We got a lot of shows under our belt. Just want to put this plug in. What we do with Paragliding Talk for the community is try to keep the sport clean, keep it safe, make it better. And maybe it's something that you're going to learn from the show. So promote the show, support the show if you can, and keep it going. I put up a poll. I was wanting to know if you were going to be going to the Salton Sea. So most people are not going to be going to the Salton Sea flying. Um, that's what it looks like in our group tonight. I'm gonna end that poll. 18% said no way. That's pretty funny. So
Is this still
18% said yes.
scheduled in February like it usually is?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question next.
Yeah, because I haven't heard any much about it because they usually have that Facebook group that pops up, um, the Salton Sea Flying one, and I think it's like the second week in February. But yeah, it's always about that time because it's like perfect weather there. So
Yeah, from what I've heard is they're intentionally not um, making a lot of noise about it because there is some concern that, with the changes that took place last year, that, by publicizing how much we're going to do, um, that maybe the authorities will try to do more to restrict the activity down there. So
Suckers.
I just, it's very unfortunate, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to get the diehards who see the value and who do want to go down there. It's still, in my opinion, still one of the most important paragliding or paramotoring events in the country, certainly for California anyway. And hopefully we can still keep doing it, and do it in a way that still doesn't get the ire of the authorities as they start trying to monetize the lithium that's there, that they don't want us to be around. So I think it's going to happen. It's just, who's going to show up, and where they'll show up is the part that I think, those that are going are talking to each other, and that those that are not aren't.
I was pretty bummed out when I heard what they did last year. And they
yeah,
blocked it off. They said you can't go in this area, you can't do this. And I just think about how much like wasted space is out there, right? You can't build houses, you can't do anything out. It's like, dude, what are we doing? We're not leaving a footprint. We're literally going out there, we might bend a blade of dead grass. What is their like fascination with stopping us from going there? And I get they're trying to like impress buyers for the potential for lithium ion. I I
Well,
don't understand.
the irony is that, the PPG pilots, it's only a big event once a year, but there's all the other motorized activities that use that area every single week, year round.
yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but unfortunately, it's the nature of living in California, I think, and we'll
California.
continue to see it change. Hey, if you like, I'll pull up a couple of those pictures I mentioned.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you want
Yeah.
to screen share, go for it.
Let's see how to do that, because it's been a little while.
Yeah. Too long.
Yeah, where am
Gonna
I
have Harley on the show more often.
let's see, where am I going to click share? I know it's around in here somewhere.
Bottom of your screen.
Yeah. Chat, show, record, AI captions. I do not see a share tonight.
Yeah, it's under let's see here. 1, 2, 3,
Oh yeah,
4,
now I
5,
found it.
6. It's the sixth one down. Yeah, from the
All
top.
right. All right, let's try that, see if that works.
Hey.
There you go.
There you go. So this first one here is actually showing weather, and this happened to be through my ForeFlight. And you see, I wasn't particularly smart there. I landed up with all this rain happening pretty much right over me. I flew right through it. And you can see the green stuff is relatively light, but I was right on the edge of this heavy rain. And there's another picture where you see all this rain on my helmet. It was pretty intense.
Oh my gosh.
So this is coming into Oshkosh, and basically all the general aviation have to fly in on this specific approach path. And you can see here, I kind of flew like right on by them, and then I was able to go off to another location to land as an ultralight and not actually go directly into the field. You can see, that's just a follow-on. The part that I think is really cool is this picture here, because here I am, and you can see there's a jet, and you can see I was actually at about 4,400 feet, and I was only doing about 37 knots at the time, so relatively slow. Like, most of these guys were probably doing like 90 knots. I don't remember what the altitude was of the jet, but most of these guys were at about 2,500 feet coming in, and so it obviously made sense for me to be higher and out the way. And I think the last one I had here sort of gives you that wide view of everything that was going on.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the busiest airspace I've ever been in. And it was kind of a crazy day. I mean, even this big twin engine over here, and then of course everybody else here. So and I think this was pulled off ADSB Exchange at the time, so it might even still be accessible.
That was Craig Taylor with the twin engine there.
All right, I gotta stop sharing here. Back to
Wow,
you.
that's super cool.
Yeah.
So weather conditions, since we're on the topic, they're going to play a significant factor in any aviation sport. How do you assess and navigate those challenges that are posed during these events?
Yeah, mean, I think when you first start to fly, right, you kind of, we have weather that's, is intended to scare you, or at least everyone tells you, right, don't fly more than the first couple of hours in the day, and only the last couple of hours in the day is because it can get quite thermic in the day. And that's mostly what we are trained to fear, so to speak. And it's kind of only fly in the most ideal conditions where the wind is relatively low, and where the forecast gives you nice, clear weather. And I think, generally speaking, for most paramotor pilots, that's what makes it fun, right? You get up in a nice, crisp early morning before everybody else, and you get to go see the world from above and just enjoy it for everything it is. So, good weather conditions are always better than anything else. I think what happens, and so like in general aviation, it's kind of the same way. You kind of look at the weather, and if it even looks even a little bit undoable, you're like, I'm not flying today. But what happens is you build experience, and then of course in airplanes you become a commercial pilot, and now there's this additional pressure that you got a boss paying you money to fly, and so there's a lot more pressure to fly in conditions which maybe are less ideal. And so your training is primarily like, is it legal to fly this, and is the aircraft legal to fly, and then the third assessment is, am I capable of flying it? And so that last one, of course, is not whether you just are trained and have the experience to do it, but it's also whether you are in the right state of mind and the right comfort for that day. All those things become pretty important factors. And so one of the challenges that you face as a paramotor pilot when you begin to start, pushing the odds, and, whether it's a race against yourself or a race against somebody else's time, you start to, make decisions that can get you into trouble relatively quickly. And I've been very lucky, for some of the bad decisions that I made. I was either on the ground and just got very, very humbled very, very quickly, or the bad weather that I found in the sky, or that I decided to fly through instead of around, were not that dramatic that it was exceptionally dangerous. If anything else, it was really just very, very uncomfortable, and wasn't a great idea. I mean, sure, flying underneath a storm at night in a paramotor is probably a little too dangerous. But I think overall, I think, having good aeronautical decision making, we don't really adopt enough in paramotoring around aviation language, such as, I am safe, right? Where you have had any illness, whether you're on any medications, whether there's any stress going on in your life, alcohol the night before maybe, fatigue, or any external emotional or external pressures. Those are some just basic things where I think as paramotor pilots we kind of do it because of the assessment we do. But if we just adopted the same language that airplane pilots use, which is like, yeah, I'm going to do an I am safe assessment before I do that. And there are a whole bunch of other aviation related acronyms to, checking your aircraft to make sure that that's airworthy and safe and legal and all the rest of it. And then you do a weather assessment. And once again, is it doable? Well, that's one thing, but is it going to be fun? Maybe rather stay on the ground. And there's the adage, which is it's always better to be on the ground wishing you're in the air than being in the air wishing you're on the ground. And there have been a few occasions, and I think quite a few pilots have experienced this, is nothing worse than sort of trying to come in for a landing and coming through some very, very unstable air, whether it's a thermal, whether it's anything else, where you are being physically thrown from one side to the next, and it's very difficult to keep straight and level flight coming into that's pretty extreme for a paramotor pilot, because it's not like we can kind of just come in with a landing gear a little bit harder and it's all going to be okay. If you're coming in on your feet, you've got to kind of nail it, and the last thing you want to be doing is thrown one side where you're coming down sideways. It's not a very comfortable thing. And so I think as paramotor pilots, particularly foot launch pilots, you're going to take the necessary precautions and be probably more cautious than you would be feeling safe in an airplane.
Paramotoring is not only an individual sport, and that's obviously important that you're individually good, but it's also community driven activity. How has the paramotoring community supported or influenced your adventures?
That's a really fantastic question. I think we can all attest to the fact that it is some kind of a family or a brotherhood or a sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. But we're a small group of people in reality. There's probably more. In fact, there are more other kinds of aviators than they are paramotor aviators, for sure, certain. And a lot of people just are risk adverse. So we tend to help each other. We do almost anything possible to help another person succeed and get into the air and do that. And as everyone knows, I got hurt my very first takeoff. I landed up landing badly, and I broke an ankle. And I'm the poster child of what not to do and how bad it can go. So don't be Harley, be better than Harley.
Yeah.
But the one thing my instructor never did was give up on me. He just kept saying, keep coming back, and just come and help me teach other people how to kite, and when you feel ready, we'll get you into the air. And it's kind of why I think I'm quite reasonable as an instructor, is because I spent a lot of time helping other people to kite, and it made my kiting a lot better. And overall, my control for my launches got very good. And so instead of bringing the wing up and chasing underneath it and really zigzagging halfway down the runway and then gunning it to getting off the ground, and it looks scary to everybody, including the guy doing it. When I finally did go, he was like, "Oh, just bring your paramotor and we'll do some taxi stuff." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure." And so I did. I got the paramotor up and I brought the wing up perfectly, and I'm sort of running down the runway, and just a little bit of power to help it, make it easy, lift the weight off me. And in the radio, he's going like, "All right, full power." And I'm like, "No, no, no, no." And he said it a second time, and I'm like, "No, no, no." And then the third time, it just lit me up and powered up, and took off, and the rest is history. I did a 10-minute flight, came back and laid it out and did it again, and kept on doing it. And sure, I still had difficult moments. I struggled for nearly a 2-year period, and I got to fly with a great group of guys that the more experienced guys were always the last to get off the ground, because they'd always help somebody else get off the ground. And we would go fly places for breakfast, and then land out in the field somewhere. We're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to pull this off. It's a long walk back, and we would help each other, and that's how we did it. And so I think it's like that in a lot of places, and I'm very, very fortunate. I think here in the Bay Area, we've got 160 pilots in our group now, and probably 40 or 50 of them are active, and there's at least 20 to 30 pilots that fly every week, and we have a fantastic group down in St. Martin. I think of like 10 or 15 pilots that fly there like several times a week together as often as they can. And the forum has just been fantastic at welcoming in new pilots. They ask the same questions that the last guy asked, but we all answer them, and we don't berate each other, and we just spend a lot of time helping each other succeed. And we've got some incredibly smart people in our group that are exceptionally technical. So, it comes down to carb tuning or fuel consumption and radios and communications and weather. I will never be as good as Caleb explaining weather. I wish I would be, because he's so good at it. And so we're just, that's how the community works. And I think in paramotoring, anyone coming into the sport is going to find that in the local group. Probably staying away from Facebook, where it gets ugly occasionally, is a smart thing to do. But in your local groups, the 4 or 5 guys that you go fly with on a regular basis, if you don't have the spare props, somebody else will. We're just always there to help you out, whether it's oil, gas. On a bad day, you land out somewhere and you need a ride home, you can, pick up the phone and have a small walk of shame. There's always somebody there to help.
Duckspit PPG donated $10 to the super chat. Thank you. I really appreciate that. My little thing is triggering, saying this is the first time. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's super cool. So last question. I know we got just like a couple minutes, so I'm sorry to load you with a heavy question at the end, but just if you will, beyond the thrill of breaking records and cross country flights and all these, what do you hope your paramotoring achievements are going to contribute to the broader adventure sports community? Do you see paramotoring gaining more recognition, popularity in the future? And if so, why?
It's another great question. I mean, I would like to hope that some of my adventures have led to more and more interest in cross-country flying. Guys like, Matt Minyard and Leah Kutula, who often go international to go, fly competition flights, and who are real record holders and very successful in what they do. Those opportunities seem very few and far between, and it's taking a long time to try and get that kind of competition and activity off the ground here. I know the USPPA is interested in trying to figure out how to do that, where we can have a couple of events a year that would lead to real records, and in a way that more people in the community can contribute that way. So I think, definitely the sport's continuing to grow. I think there is a need to, be cognizant of the fact that there's more of us flying in more congested areas, and we have to, not only be better trained, but also, more, I don't want to use the word professional, but certainly appear to be very capable and safe pilots. I think is something we need to do more of.
Being representative of each other,
Yeah,
like if I go to a yard or something and I leave a bunch of trash behind when I've taken off or whatever, they can leave a nasty taste in someone's mouth. And then Harley goes by and they think, oh, it's one of those guys, that leaves a bunch of garbage behind or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you
so
represent.
we want to be good ambassadors, but it's also, it's a little more than that. We have to help educate other people, and also recognize that we've got to be educated by other forms of education, of aviation. The last part of your question there, Robert, just say that again, because it's sort of escaping me that I wanted to answer.
Yeah, the contribution, obviously there is a certain point of you're aspiring to break these records. Um, I asked, do you see paramotoring gaining more recognition and popularity in the future? And if so, uh, why do you think that? What's driving that?
So I think it will, and I think there is a desire by a segment of the paramotor community to go do that. We have a lot to learn from what happens in Europe and in South America. Honestly, we could just go learn so much from that. I still think we kind of have this dirt bike mentality where we want to be able to just go out and zoom around to our heart's content and sort of keep it at a fun level for us rather than necessarily a competitive nature. I think we can support both. It's just it's got to, I think, evolve more organically. I think we've had various people come in at various points who've raised the profile up very dramatically, and then they tend to fade out after some time because this stuff's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do. I've spent a lot of time this year trying to engage with local airports that have not been too friendly and cooperative with ultralight pilots this year, and it's very time consuming, and it can be a little demoralizing, and it's taken some of the fun out of flying for me this year. But I think there is some value in us all working together, and we can make the sport whatever we need to do. And the more we keep it safe, the more the organizations help to raise the level of training and quality of pilotage and pilotship. The hopefully the less likely we are to land up with any substantial regulation changes, and our destiny could still remain in our control if we continue to sort of encourage each other to be safe and be good ambassadors for the sport.
Great answer. We're gonna go to the after show. We're gonna send out some links. I put out another question and a poll. All your Christmas shopping completed? Question mark. Harley, have you done any Christmas shopping?
I'm very fortunate. I don't have to do any. I did want to give a shout out to my law student. He did send me a text, and I forgot to do this. Nick Garner is a brand new pilot. He got his first couple of flights in just last week, and he got his coin from me. So he jumped
Nice.
tonight for the first time, and so I wanted to give him a quick shout out.
Oh, that's awesome. Good job, Nick. I think I saw his picture on your Instagram.
Yeah, I think I put it up there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm stoked to see you doing training out there and seeing some people come your way. If you want to support Harley's school and his adventures, you can go to the website's 50X Challenge. You can also go to there's a couple ways you can get a hold of him through Facebook, and I put some links in the description. But dreamlifterparamotors.com is for the dedicated for the school, and just got good things going on. And Harley, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and join us and hang out and talk about your endeavors. I can't think of a better person and a better representative of the sport right now, and the things that you've just kind of been steady chopping away at these different things. And I just really appreciate your contributions that you constantly bring to the table, and just a good attitude all the time. So I appreciate that, man. We're gonna go to the after show.
Thank you so much.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Harley.
Thank you for your moderation, Sean. Thank you, Scott. Mom, thank you for what you do behind the scenes. We're going to go to the after show. If you want to join us, the guys will put a link in the description. Come hang out. And thanks for watching. If I don't see you on the air, I'll see you in there. Have a great night.